call the Guthrie Historic Preservation Commission to order for February 2014. In fact, we have very little on the agenda tonight. But what we do need to do is approve the minutes, or actually, I guess I need to have a roll call
We need to
first,
have a
being
roll
that this
call.
is more of a workshop. But Mr. Fish, could we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Wood,
Present?
Commissioner Bothroyd, Commissioner Bowers, Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Long, Commissioner Mahoney,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
So we've got three.
We do not have a
We
quorum.
do not have a
We
quorum.
don't have a quorum.
Which, in that case, the meeting will be adjourned as far as,
We cannot take any action on approval of
on
minutes.
approval of minutes at the moment, but we will adjourn the meeting and go into our workshop, which is fine to have without a quorum. So
Correct.
we can all be here and discuss all that. So.
Can you
Okay.
give me 2 minutes then?
Sure.
Okay. No. Well, I don't know if I still record it if it's not a quorum, so I just need to find out.
Well, for the workshop, it might be handy if we just leave it recorded.
Okay.
In case we need to.
In case we need to come back and
Refer.
revisit it or refer back, I'd appreciate it if you just let us record this. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's great.
community effort. This concerns everybody in the
Okay.
community, so
Okay.
regardless of whether we have a quorum, we can't take any action on it. We can just discuss it and then
Okay.
make
When
notes.
the person shows up, they can.
Oh.
Then we can read,
Okay.
yeah, that way we're here and ready to
Yeah.
go.
Okay. I don't know how all that works on this.
Okay, very good.
I was just gonna watch the meeting a little bit, and since y'all are going straight into the workshop,
That's
this is
right.
y'all's business, not mine. I'm gonna
Well-
give you that,
Thank you, sir.
and so, you know, but
Okay.
I'll go to another meeting.
Okay. What I passed out is,
James, hello, this is Ed.
oh,
Okay. Very well. Well, we're here. And when you get here, we will have a quorum, so we'll look forward to seeing you. Okay, bye. That was James. He's on his way. He got stuck in a meeting in Edmond, so
okay.
I want to turn that off.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started just with the
Yeah.
workshop. Our purpose tonight is to talk about the Guthrie ordinance and design and sign guidelines, to take a look at seeing what enhancements we may need to do. I think just about everybody that is a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, probably with the exception of Kim, probably wasn't here at that time when it first started. So I'd like to kind of go through some preliminary issues, give you all a little bit of background so you know how everything came to be and why it did in the manner that it did. What I passed out for you is just kind of a list of items that I wanted to go over at the workshop this evening that'll kind of set a format for us as we go through the project. It may take heaven knows how long, several months to go through any kind of a rewrite, but to also give you a little bit of background. There's really no brand new information, but a lot of this is printouts from different websites, website addresses that I think is a really, really good resource for information. You know, things that I think we probably either A, forgot, B, we thought we knew, or C, is shockingly new information that could be a good source. So, with that, item number one, how did we get here and why are we here? What we call the Red Book, which is, you know, in designer parlance is really a deep maroon. But nonetheless, you know how I get. The guidebook was put together to basically help the commission in guiding it in making decisions. You know, it's not a firm, fast, thou shalt, but to provide information in making that final decision. It's basically got built on the Guide for Rehabilitation, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a few minutes. That was put together by the Department of the Interior. They write all the information for this. The Red Book was put together it was several years ago, but I'm going to back up. In 1974 was when the city of Guthrie identified its area that it wanted to be included in the National Register. So that's really when our historic district was born. And then about 4 years later, the actual ordinance putting together guidelines for how we should act, how we should govern, how we should, maintain our inventory of historic buildings. That then came together, and from that, then I'm going to put down probably about 10, 15 years ago, a group of people who were on the Historic Preservation Commission, and quite a number of citizens in the area put down and took the ordinance one step farther, basically putting down with copies of pictures and that sort what signs should look like, i.e. the sign guidelines, and what designs should be considered when we look at the exterior. And please remember that everything we do on the HP Commission is on the exterior of a building, not the interior. We don't get to go inside.
Right.
We can certainly provide information if asked, and refer them to our friends over at the Territorial Museum. They've got a wealth of information on interiors. But as a commission, we just handle the exterior of the building. And this is usually where, when you're talking to somebody who's just moved into town, they go, "Oh, thank goodness," and then breathe this big sigh of relief that, okay, fine, you're just on the exterior. So, at any rate, like I said, about 10, 15 years ago, the commission at that time got a grant from the state to hire a consultant who put the Red Book together. So it took a considerable amount of time, a lot of meetings with, again, interested parties, and they broke down into different subgroups and so on to identify how it should be laid out, and then took that information to the consultant. So quite honestly, I can see that any rewrite or update needs to be a process that is very thorough, very comprehensive, that we make sure we cross T's and dot I's and such on all of that. So with that in mind, first thing that I'd like to talk about is the approach on how we take a look at our historic buildings. And it's not just, does it look old or not, but we take a look at four major areas. And again, this isn't something created by the HP Commission,
right,
or the Planning Department or anything, but rather from the Department of Interior, feds, and then a subgroup of that, the Park Service. They oversee all historic efforts nationwide, and they came out with four basic guidelines. Preservation, which is basically the building that you have, what ought to be done in terms of maintenance and repair. And if we were at that level for the entire city, we'd be in great shape. But we're actually at the next level, which is rehabilitation. So our ordinance, our guidelines, both for design and the standards, are based on the rehabilitation approach, which talks about, okay, if you need to make any kind of changes or any kind of additions to meet the changing use, because we don't have the same uses as we used to. We have new uses. We don't have a need for blacksmithing. Okay, that kind of thing went out. So the buildings have to adapt to our use. As people say, we don't live in museums. These are living, breathing buildings that we have to use. We want to maintain the exterior look of the facade, the exterior materials as well, and that's what we all try to do. The third approach is restoration. That would be a situation where, say we had a building and 50 years ago they decided to add some new aspect to the building, whether it's an addition or a new kind of material or whatever. The restoration would be, okay, what can we do to maybe peel that addition?
The tiles are...
Yeah, the Carrara
yeah,
marble.
Yeah, those are exactly
That's
the type of
exactly
thing
it.
we're talking about.
Yeah, okay, well, what do we need to do, to help the owner of that building peel that addition off and put the building back to the way it was originally? Or, is that
Is it
addition, Yeah, and I think that's exactly where you're going. Is that addition significant of itself? You know, is that addition actually 70 years old? So maybe it's historic too. And that's something that the group would need to take a look at. And then the fourth and final one is reconstruction. And that's where, say, a significant part of a building is deteriorated or no longer even exists. And that would where somebody would come in and try to put something up new, and you really don't want a building to be, how should I say, a new version of something old. You want it to be something that would complement the rest. So that's why we focus on preservation and rehabilitation, and mainly
So
rehab.
we wouldn't want to try to recreate the old?
No,
Say if
because
a
it would be
building burned, you know, say
yeah.
if it burned and we had a slot.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to try to put it back with the red sandstone and all
Well,
that?
you could put it back in red sandstone so that it complements everything, but you can't, the phrase that was told me, you can't build an old building. You can't have a building that was 1 year old that was built to look like it's 101 years old. It needs to look like it's contemporary, but it can be built in the style of how it was 100 years ago. A person would have to look at it and say, oh, that's a new building, but it looks
good, though.
it looks like it fits in with this geographic area.
Okay.
Now, I understand what the national park, and everybody says, I understand what they all talk about that. I have issues with that too, though. I think that there are times that it should look older. It needs to be a 21st century building, but if it does look like a 19th century building, I think that is really good too. I mean, and I think it would be obvious that it's a new building, just because of
Materials.
the,
Everything
just
looks
of
new,
the
but, yeah.
fresh new material used, and it may incorporate some of the old, again, sandstone or
The arched
different,
windows and
if
things
they do
like
that.
Right.
But I think that there is a fine line there between
Right.
contemporary
Yeah.
and
I
making.
hear what you're saying. But you could still do the arch windows, you could still do, that material, but you wouldn't want a tourist 20 years from now, or even 5, walking up and going, now, which one is the old building? I mean, you'd want to give honor to that old building
Okay.
and say, okay, I can tell this is an old one and this one isn't, as opposed to,
Something
which
must
one's
have
really
happened,
old?
you know, and then
Yeah.
what's the story here? Why is this not old?
Right,
When
right.
these two obviously are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So my understanding is that's why the National Park Service has come up with those 4 guidelines. And again, or 4 approaches. And then within each of those 4 approaches, there are basic guidelines on how you go through and determine.
So what we hope is we can preserve and rehabilitate, barring a disaster
Right.
like a fire or flood
Yes,
or
yes.
something that would take it down, so that we don't have to worry about reconstruction.
Right, absolutely correct. And again, it's on the basis of that preservation and rehabilitation that the entire Red Book is built.
So that just because a building's been standing, all of a sudden the facade falls off. We want to try to avoid that kind of, we
Right.
have to reconstruct because that
Yeah.
building fell apart.
And again, that's why it's called the Historic Preservation
Yep.
Department, not Historic Rehabilitation, is that you want to catch it at the beginning.
Beginning,
You want to try to
absolutely.
preserve it so we don't have to get into historic rehabilitation or historic
Well, it's like
restoration.
what we had to do in the old tannery project, putting the big steel poles through.
Right.
To pull the buildings back together.
Yes,
Before
exactly.
that crumbled,
Exactly.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
And quite honestly, this is where we really need to strengthen what we do, both as a commission and as a department here on city staff, is to be more assertive on checking out buildings and seeing where preservation needs to happen so that we can help the owners keep the building from having the front facade fall off.
Right.
And a lot of that is going to be training and teaching. a lot of them. Now, we did that about 2 years ago. Again, we got a little grant, and we had a representative come in from the National Trust for Historic Places, and he put on a seminar for building owners and that type of thing to teach them not only about this, but what their resources are, historic tax credits, who you can go to locally, and by that I mean Central Oklahoma, for tradespeople and craftspeople, and what vendors have materials that are
So
close
was
to
that
historic.
well attended?
No.
That's what I was.
But there
We
were people
probably
there.
had, yeah.
Oh,
There
yeah,
were- there
I'm
were-
sure.
There were folks there. They,
I'm sure there
they're,
were. And we have new building owners, even since that 2-year time,
Right.
or
Yes.
3-year, however long it
Right.
was.
I would say we probably had maybe 10 or so
Yeah.
at that. But it was a great resource. Wish we had had more, but we sent notifications, separate
yeah, that's
letters
all you can do.
to every home, to every building
Building.
owner. Yeah, it wasn't just a notice in the paper.
And I feel that's a major issue is education for building owners and occupants,
Yes.
both residential and commercial renters. I see that that's the biggest problem we have as far as restoration or prevention and to keep things going on, is that they don't know, that they just come in, they see it's a business opportunity, and they're not looking at the historic aspect of the building. They're just wanting to sell their wares and widgets.
Right. And you bring up a good point in talking about commercial buildings and homes. We have a geographic boundary per the historic ordinance as to what area it is that this commission addresses, and it does not address the residential area. It's specifically
Even though there
commercial.
are residential homes within it.
Yes, yeah, there are a few. I
A
would say.
few. There's not many, but there are.
Yeah, I would say probably 98, 99%
Is all
is
commercial.
commercial, right.
Which, in some ways, is so much easier than dealing with a residential historic preservation area. Because it's easier to deal with building owners and keeping the buildings up than telling a residential owner that you can't paint your house that color.
Yeah.
Or you can't change your windows.
Yeah.
Or your front door is not approved and you can't
We'll
put
be
that.
building one
So
in the
how-
historic district within the next 2 years, so
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
deal with this then.
Yes.
So what are our boundaries?
There is
I-
a map.
I'm-
in
And
your
that's why I was wondering
book.
where the map was, because I
Okay,
was not.
now you're going to test me on this.
Is it in the guidelines or is it in the
Ed's there,
ordinance?
what-
There's-
No, it's in the
There's
guidelines.
there's a couple of them in there. There's
Go
mine.
to page DG, Design Guidelines 5.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, you've got your.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay? And
I knew I'd seen it, but I just couldn't
Right.
find it all of a sudden.
And that's it, you
That's
got
it.
it there, Kathy. The Capital Townsite Historic District, the ordinance defines that area as all areas that we have oversight over. Is that phrased correctly?
Yes.
At any rate, if you take a look at the very dark
That's the
outline.
Landmark district.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the
Oh, the
wider
dark
one
outline, yeah.
is the Capital Townsite Historic District.
Gotcha.
And that's the one that was identified back in '74.
Right.
And that's the one this commission
Still.
looks at. The lighter one, the gray, the one that's kind of marked in a gray, that is a smaller area within that, is the National Historic Landmark District. It has a special designation. Please don't ask me to go into full detail.
Gotcha.
But that is basically a primary area where the buildings are, how shall I say, very fine. But that also, of course, is within the capital town
And I
site.
don't want to sound rude when I say this, but they're more significant buildings.
You're not-
They're
thank you.
larger, they're bigger, they're,
And
Yeah.
what I think the thing is that they're a significant contribution
Mm-hmm.
to the types of buildings of late
Right.
19th and early
Exactly.
20th. That's why they designated it
The
as
landmark.
a historic landmark district
As
as
opposed
opposed to just the historic district.
Mm-hmm.
Even those homes in there are significant and have significance,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't necessarily as far as commercial structures.
Right, and
Right.
hence national. I mean, that special significance has a significance not only locally, but nationally.
National.
And that's predominantly the central business district of the
Exactly.
downtown.
Yeah, gotcha.
Within the actual ordinance itself, again, more in the front page, there's the legal description of the geographic boundary that goes into that particular area. So, all righty.
So what I hear you saying is that we, as a commission, also need to be more diligent in if we notice a building that might have some issues, in asking if that has been addressed already, or if someone needs to go and talk with the building owner, that kind of thing.
That's correct.
Okay.
Again, in our ordinance.
Since I'm new to the commission, I'm still learning.
Oh, okay.
That
Well,
kind of thing.
I
Yeah.
appreciate the
I'm
question.
not new and I'm still learning.
I've been here a while, and it's always, I just read this book again this weekend. I read it years ago, but then you forget, and
That's
reading
right.
ordinance at the front of the book, it's like, wow, okay, that gives us more latitude to do things than what we have been doing and what we should be doing as far
Yep.
as what we're not doing.
Right, right.
That's what I was going to ask. There's one building in particular I won't mention, but we have talked about it from time to time, and it's in a very prominent position and beautiful architecture, but it's crumbling. So, can you do anything besides just tell the owner, hey, this is going to be a public hazard here because all
Yeah.
this stuff's going to fall out on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Your building's going to be ruined. Then we got to go back with rehabilitation rather than preservation.
Right.
And it's
that's really,
real-
quite honestly, where I need your guys' help.
It's real scary.
Without claiming that well, at this point, it's Jim Fish that goes out and talks to the individual owners. We have
Lucky Jim.
We have a
Yeah.
one-person code enforcement
Right.
department, which not only handles historic preservation, but
But homes.
high grass and weeds, and
Yeah.
and minimum maintenance,
Rusted
and-
out cars and
Rusted out cars.
et cetera, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of towns, quite honestly, have a full historic preservation department. We don't. We have
We have one of
it's
the
a-
largest districts ever, and we have a tenth of a person, maybe, if we're lucky,
Right.
And
But-
it's not anybody's fault, it's just the way it
I consider
is.
myself a citizen.
Yeah.
Right.
But
There
you're
you go.
busy, your other 9/10 are
Oh,
out
yeah.
doing dilapidated cars
Absolutely.
and high grass and
But-
roadkill or whatever they've got you doing.
I like roadkill. We can handle that one. But that's why it's wonderful to have the volunteers, you guys, that are part of the HP commission. I'd like us all to work as a unit rather than just be saying, Jim, would you please go out and check on the such and such? And again, your eyes help us, and that does give us the opportunity for us to say, Jim, go do that. But sometimes having your presence with Jim, it's always
Adds
better to
some
go in twos.
credence to it, yeah.
Add some credence. And if we, as we raise our level of understanding and education, it's kind of like, the higher tide raises all boats type thing, and as everyone becomes more knowledgeable about HB, hopefully you'll go and share that when somebody comes up to you and says, why didn't the yada yada happen? And you can say, let me tell you, I can, set that record
So we can be
straight.
more than sign Nazis.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would love for us all to be
I
more
would
than
like to,
sign. And we all know that term is used out
I think
there.
that's an old term, though, don't you?
Oh, yeah,
I don't
it's-
hear it.
it's-
Yeah.
I
don't
have in the
get it.
last month heard some people saying, you realize what you guys are called?
Yeah, but I think that's from the old days, because I think
No?
we've really
Well,
tried to help and work with people.
It
Yeah.
is from.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
we do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We try to be as business friendly as we can.
Yeah.
And I think we've been sometimes over and above
I was going
what
to say, I think we've passed things that maybe you and I,
would not
Wouldn't
necessarily,
really do,
wouldn't really
but,
do
you
in
know.
the historic district, that I'm not really that, I kind of wince at like,
Just a
"Nah,
little
I don't
bit."
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it brings, it's a two-way street. We got to, if Guthrie doesn't have business, it brings in no tax dollars. If
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's
bring in
right.
tax dollars, then the street lights
No
go
buildings are
off
gonna
and
get
everybody
fixed.
goes home or goes
Yep.
somewhere else,
Yep.
and the Guthrie, then we don't, it just, so we gotta,
But then if we start not looking historic,
Then
we're
not
gonna lose.
historic.
then we're not
Different.
historic, and we
Yeah.
lose,
we lose so much of
so
who,
much, so we
of our
have to,
identity.
there
Yes.
has to be a limit, and yes, there is a line in the sand eventually that you cannot cross, and it's a difficult thing, and it's on a per case basis, and that's what's hard to deal with, because not everything is cut and dried.
Right.
I feel we're even-handed, and they can call us hysterical commission or, or sign
Sure.
Nazis, Well, you know, at times, if the shoe fits, yeah, that's
Yes.
what we gotta be. Other
But most of the
times,
time, we're just asking for a small change
Concession.
maybe from what they're doing, you
Yeah.
know, so.
can you please just fit it into more, and that's, I think, again, education, and a few things that I'm sure we'll be getting in, when we get into the meat of changing things around and getting them set up and redoing this book. I think that'll be great for the business owners, the building owners, and even the real estate people who are trying to sell these empty buildings. If
Right.
we can give them a sheet, I think we talked about this once a long time ago, to give all the real estate companies in town something, not necessarily the whole book,
We have given them the
whole-
whole book.
the book.
You bet.
but it doesn't, that's usually just gets put on a shelf and that's it. That if,
Because it's a lot to go through.
oh yeah, but I mean, just a condensed, maybe just a page, you know, or maybe a front and back.
That they
or
can
just
give to whoever they're
Yeah.
working with,
Yes,
saying,
looking to buy
here are what,
building.
or what, some of the things you'll have
give
to
it to
think
the
about.
title, give it
you
to
know.
the real estate
Yeah.
people and the title companies here in town
Exactly.
to just, you know, here's, and one thing that, where is it? It's, I saw it, highlight page, DG8, on page DG8. I thought was really, really good.
Oh, yeah, this one
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah,
tagged.
I've got that. And just,
And that's your
make that-
item 3 on your handout, folks. Really?
Okay, but,
Yeah.
and that's, see,
Yeah.
that's what, and I said, the standards need to be more prominent, you know, DG8 needed for applicants and to the public.
Right.
Because that really says it all. I think that really does a nice
And you know where
job.
that comes from?
Where did that come from?
The National Park Service,
This
from
was
the
the-
Department of Interior.
Isn't that
That's
nice
what
of
we
them
go
to do
by.
that?
But this
Yeah.
real, and it's just a single piece of paper, that when I read it, I'm going like, you know, that really says it all, right there.
Right.
In light
Yes.
of that, maybe we should include this with each application for
Yes,
signs.
we should.
Yeah, and
Excellent
that's-
idea.
Yes, and that was part of what I had written down for questions and what we need to address, because people are,
Well, they don't know.
no, they
You know,
don't
and
know.
that's one of the reasons they feel so,
Well, if they're coming
Bitter
here
about it.
from out of town, they don't even know this commission exists
No.
and why we do.
Exactly.
And this would help them understand that, you know,
But there are so many different, and the book is full of it, you know, full of good things. Not-
Yeah, clarify that if you would,
When they-
please. Some days it does.
That's right, the book is,
It's full of
yep, yep.
Yeah. Well, in your handout of copies of items from the website, it gets into standards for preservation and standards for rehabilitation. You know, we just talked about the four
Exactly.
different areas. It's basically got a border around it. Okay, go one more. There you go. Okay. This is, you know, approach number 1 and approach number 2. This one, approach number 2, if you will, which is the rehabilitation, are the very self-same things
that are right there.
on DG8 in the book. And the only difference,
I
major
like this
difference-
because it shows that it's the Park Service.
Yes, yes.
and not just our
us.
Yeah.
opinion.
Right.
Thank you,
Exactly, right, exactly.
And maybe we take
Yeah.
that on.
But if
the-
I was a realtor and someone was seriously purchasing a building, I'd rather hand them a page like this that says, this will help you when you
Yes.
get ready to redo your building, because we have a Historic Preservation Commission. Instead of showing them this huge book that overwhelms everybody, and frankly, it's not easy to read. Or fun. But it's full of great information, but it's not an easy read.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, you know, for everybody, if they just follow this, and then for the commission, okay,
Here.
we've, you know,
Yeah.
this is the Cliff Notes version, and the
Exactly.
red book
Yeah.
is the full dictionary, or full
And-
encyclopedia.
If somebody new in town and they're seeing this and they'll go, oh, I think I need to ask more questions because I want to do
Right.
da-da-da. And then
Yeah.
they'll know
And
they
then you
can,
can say whether it's here in Guthrie, or whether it's San Francisco, or whether it's Washington DC.
yes,
These are the
this
standards.
is the
That's
standards.
it.
It's not just
Yes,
this
yeah.
being
It's not-
hysterical.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't write these based on what Guthrie wanted, this is based on, you know.
What
the-
has
Those
proven
have
to
preserved
work.
for years.
Exactly. And the only items that are different between the standards for preservation and the standards for rehabilitation are items 9 and 10 on rehab, which talk about new additions. That if you're going to be doing something, make sure the integrity of the historic part of it isn't impaired. That's the difference.
Which
You
is
know,
negligible, really, I mean,
Right.
as far as differences go.
Proportion, pitches of roofs, the type of shingle
Right.
you use to make it, yeah, that's,
But, I think having something as simple as this, and you already found it in the book, that,
Because
this
that's
one
not
page-
overwhelming to read.
No.
It's easy to look at and say, oh, okay, that's how that
okay,
works.
I
yeah.
understand that. Yeah, because this one page is all the commission is about, is this. Follow that. And, in looking at this, it was like the bell went off. Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I remember
And,
that.
I think
And
we
this is
all.
actually it.
Yeah,
That's exactly
exactly.
it. Yeah, compare the words. It's the.
It's it.
Yeah. I looked at it and go, gosh, I've been in the forest for way too long. Look, and it's all just right here. So I thought, okay, bills are going to go off for everybody. I think this is a good thing. So
We need to attach that in our book right there.
I
Yes,
wish
I
all
will.
of us were here. I think
I
this would
wish
be
I
bell
wish
ringing for a lot
everybody
of
else
us.
was here too. But
And we may have to
we
do
have
a
some
shortened
people that are
version.
really sick and
Yeah,
can't be here.
sure,
so-
understandable. I was just going to say a shortened version of this at our next workshop to kind of kick things off, to get everybody
Just
up
say, do
to.
you know this one? Is this one? That's pretty
it's
cool.
real close, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's
Yeah, you can pretty much.
Excuse me.
it's almost, it is pretty much close to being verbatim
Right.
for most of it. But this one actually goes into a little bit, but it's great. That's what, when I read that, I'm going like, everybody should be seeing that.
Yeah, you have that aha moment.
Yeah, it's like,
that we
why
did.
is
James-
that back
I
here?
apologize.
Not a problem.
Okay.
We need to let it show on the record that we now have a quorum and that we are now in session for the Historic Preservation Commission for February 2014.
Oh.
And that we have Mr. Long now present after roll call
Commissioner Long? Here.
is present.
Sweet. Okay. That's all we're covered then.
Chairman, we have a quorum
Thank you very much, Mr. Fisher.
as of 6:03.
As of 6:03. Very good.
Maybe at the end we can do the approval of
Minutes,
prior
I agree,
minutes.
yeah. Before we adjourn, we can take care of
Right.
just business. But it's just so we have it noted that we are a quorum and we are meeting correctly.
Okay. I need to share with you our aha moment we just had.
Okay.
Okay? In that packet of information that you have is some great stuff, but if you take a look at this page, which is the standards
It's the one
for
right after that.
rehabilitation. Okay. This is basically the sum total of everything that we live and breathe about within HP. We were talking about that, how our guidelines for both design and signs are based on the Department of Interior, and they're guidelines that are used nationwide on everything. This one page that comes off their website, which is also reproduced actually in our design guidelines, which was, oh gosh, help me here.
DG8.
DG8 within your red book. This is, yeah, there you go. This is it in a nutshell. I mean, if you were to do a Cliff Notes version of the red book, it's right here.
Okay.
I mean, if people follow this, we're good to go. So, it's, like I said, Secretary of Interior, National Park Service, Standards for Rehabilitation. Sweet. Okay. Okay, so we have that. Now, another item that I wanted to make sure that I'm sure you all know or remember, or when you hear about it, you go, ah, I remember that, is the, can't remember where I am, the, what am I trying to say? Can't think. The preservation briefs. I think a lot of people within the historic area, if they don't know about it, they should. And if you go to the National Park Service, there are a list of 47 links that you can go to that the National Park Service has put together. Yeah, it's this page right here. Looks like this. National Park Service, basically the FAQs on anything you would want to know to have reference to, yeah, that one right there, on a number of different topics, so you don't have to go searching. Things like, best methods for repointing masonry joints. How can you improve energy efficiency in historic buildings? Preservation and repair of historic stained and leaded glass. It's not a full measure building overhaul, but it's a great place to go to start to get information, again, that are based on those 10 rehabilitation points. You know, one that didn't click with me until I looked at it was aluminum and vinyl sidings on historic buildings, an appropriate substitute material for resurfacing historic wood. Never would have thought of that, but here you go. Something to take a look at it.
But we have an ordinance that doesn't allow you to use vinyl siding within Guthrie, don't we?
Oh, that's part of why we're revisiting this. In Guthrie proper, that is true, but that does not apply to the historic district. That's why there are metal buildings in the historic district, and that's why we need to become more the same. You can't put a metal building out in Guthrie.
Well, they just did,
Where?
off of First, between First and Second. Jeff Blair did it.
That went, I wasn't at that goes through the planning commission, and it actually was approved because it has a brick veneer, I guess what you'd call wainscoting around the outside, or that would be why, but you're
It
right.
doesn't yet, maybe it will.
So it's north of Noble then.
It's north of Noble.
North of Noble, well, is that, I don't remember that one, I thought there was, that's a different person. I'm thinking of somebody totally different. You're right, Jeff Blair, there's a metal building that went up.
Yeah, there's some already there, been there forever, like
Yeah.
old body shop type
stuff.
off of First.
I'll
Off
have
of
to go back
First,
and-
but he's up the street, come around that bend.
Uh-huh.
And it's brand new, built, all new dirt work, everything. That was the family home. And then
And he's gonna keep his tractors or something in it.
I don't know what he's keeping
I
in
would
it.
imagine.
We'll have to
But
look.
nonetheless, it's
Well,
metal building.
let's go back to the HP
Yep.
area,
So-
because that's not in the HP.
Guthrie Historic District is not, is considered part of Guthrie proper, even though it's legal descriptions, it's Guthrie proper.
When the, let's say,
There you go.
these are areas within that boundary.
The boundaries
When the
here.
design guidelines were put together several years ago, they required, council had indicated that they wished
This is
the
Noble.
design guidelines to be applied to areas outside the Capital Townsite Historic District.
Okay.
And that'd be the entire outside black line of that is what we are, as a commission, concerned with. Anything outside that would be in regular,
This being Noble,
yeah.
so.
Anything outside that would go to actually city and city code enforcement and.
So he's just
So
outside.
he
But
may not even be
if he's in proper though, he shouldn't have been able to put up a metal building.
Right,
That's
there
not
are no,
what we're-
that's right.
Yeah.
Guthrie does not, now, that didn't come in front of
No.
planning commission.
I
And
don't
that would
think
go,
so.
now that, outside of that dark line would go in front of planning commission if somebody wanted something like that.
Mhm.
But we're concerned with inside that line.
Right. Okay. Well, we've gone through first three major items. The fourth item that I wanted to go through was basically how we work within the area, and one was doing a building assessment. We talked briefly about that before we got started, was basically, and it's also in your packet there, doing a building assessment of each of the buildings within the Capital Townsite Historic District, such that we could take a look at the building, again, exterior, check to see what items, what the status are of everything from masonry, wood, door, storefront, as identified in the book, the red book, each of those categories, and see, are we still in a maintenance mode, or are we about to get into a rehabilitation mode? Because we want to preferably keep it in preservation and not have it go into rehabilitation like we discussed.
Be a lot cheaper on the owner too.
It would be a
Absolutely.
whole heck of a lot cheaper in that. But as you can see from this, what we're looking at is, maybe breaking part of the area down into sections for each one of the commission members, and having each one of you go with either Jim or I. We can break it up that way, and do a walking or rolling tour of the area and identify.
Will you carry us around if we get tired?
You can sit right here, and I've got multiple speeds. We'll depends on
Need
how
to hook
quick
up a
or-
little wagon behind and see we just.
Take all of us.
There you go.
A little train.
I'm liking this. But we need to identify what's in a very good and what's in a satisfactory condition, to try to do that. And then, like we were talking about before, the whole thing about a lot of this is educating and making people aware of what needs to be done. Where are the resources? Where can they go to get help on this?
Assistance, yeah.
What kind of tax credits are out there? Put them in touch with SHIP. A lot of people don't know or don't have a clue what the State Historic Preservation Office is all about, or what they can do. Would love to see them to be able to do more, but their funds are also constrained by Fed and so on. But again, people aren't going to do things unless they know they have a resource or a place to go, or are told. Now, again, I would be the first to admit, would love to have been a whole lot more proactive in a lot of these areas. Haven't been as much as I would like for our department, but we are constrained. And I think with your help, we can be much more aggressive in going out and just talking to people in a matter that, especially for you guys who own property in this area, you know all too well what needs to be done and what can be done and what the costs are, and what the requirements are, and if it's a poor condition, then we have to take it one step farther and say, we'd like to sit down with you and review your 30-day work plan for how this is going to be repaired.
See, that was what I was wondering. Do we have teeth to
Yes.
take a negligent property owner who's letting his building go into total disrepair?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
As you look through the ordinance itself, there is a provision in there that they have to submit a 30-day work plan. Like the rest of the town, if there's something failing, they basically have 10 days to get something together. The buildings here are in the Capital Townsite District are more complicated. It's not something that you can just throw some paint on, especially with the old masonry that may need to be totally retuck pointed, or the metal that's been rotten away and needs to be, it goes beyond being fixed, but applying additional material to it to replicate some of that area. We can require them to do a 30-day plan. If that, and by that I'm saying give us a plan within 30 days, identify a time frame when it can be done. If that plan is not submitted within 30 days, then they go before the judge to explain and can be fined.
And the problem we have, just as far as, and just take one for example, masonry. It's not just as simple as just going down to Ace and picking up a bag of mortar, mixing it up, and sticking it in the cracks where mortar used to be. Mm-hmm. The type of mortar used, because when we're trying to preserve these buildings, it needs to be of specific kind, type, strength. Otherwise, that mortar can actually do more damage, and will do more damage to that building than just leaving the mortar out, just leaving the tuck point until it falls down. It needs, obviously it would have to be repaired, but it's a tricky thing that most building owners or people who own these buildings don't know that, you mean there's more than one type of mortar, or there's more types of strengths that.
Well, we need to have a go-to list of contacts. I was looking for his name. There's a guy out of Stillwater that does all the tuck pointing, does a really good job on historic buildings. Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to supply these people with who to go to, because sometimes people just don't know who
has
to.
a list,
Okay.
not only of the contractors who would do everything from tuck pointing to tile repair to glazing to wood windows. They had supplied it to me, I would say probably 2-3 years ago. I've not received an updated copy, but they have that for contractors. They also have a vendor list of
Okay.
people who supply the materials to do that. And to be quite honest, a lot of that even goes up into neighboring states where you'd have to, get some of those really unique, maybe the tin ceiling type thing for exterior use and so on. But again, that's what SHPO is for. They do
Okay.
have that. And, like you, it's just sometimes asking the questions. We don't know what your questions are.
Right.
And, if you take a look at it, you guys are on the commission. And, if John Q. Public needs that, they don't know who to ask.
Right.
And so, again, it gets back to education. We got to get the word out there, And, when you're talking to friends, say, hey, I got this. I know this. Let me share this with
With
you.
you, exactly.
So, at any rate, again, this building assessment, I think, would be, a prime way for us to, as you go down, and you look on page 2 of it, has the contractor and supplier list been given to the owner? Has tax credit information been given? Do they know about SHPO? I'd like, as we go out, maybe the owner might not be there. Maybe we could make an appointment and talk to him or her and give them this information, leave them with contact information, not only here but at the state or Fed. Give them information on the secretary's guidelines. It's a large book, but you can download it on what the state standards are. Visualize that this one page is that blown up.
Condensed.
Yeah, this is the Cliff Notes for that. But that goes into all the detail. If you need to repair a historic building, here it is. That may be daunting for a lot of people. They may want to go to the website, pick up the phone and call the people
These
in
buildings
Oklahoma City.
Are daunting. They're
Oh, no
huge.
kidding.
The scale in which they're built, they don't look that big until you're standing up next to it or you're inside and you're going like, this is a lot bigger than what it looks like. Homes and residential is a little easier. It's just usually wood studs and lath and plaster, and then mainly it's paint and patch, that kind of thing. But when you get to these buildings, it is a whole new ballgame.
Yeah. But I think this could be a good vehicle for us as a commission to start and to start reaching out to the individual building owners and property owners and talking to them in a manner that says, okay, this is the resource for you. What can we do to help? Do you know what you need to do? So many, as I've seen over the years, property owners come in and they do get excited about this area. They want to open up a business because it's a neat historic town. And then they come in and say, oh, but I want to paint the building this color. We've had recent situations that are similar to that, or do something similar. And it's like, no, you moved here because you like the historic district.
So don't make some big glaring thing.
Exactly. Any changes need to be in keeping with the guidelines that are set here. The one page that we have that indicates what all our requirements are. So
I think as a commission, maybe we each have individual things that when it comes before us, we question, maybe we don't have all the information. I think about color, which comes before us a lot. We hand them that little historic paint palette thing. We had that happen recently because the people picked out 2 colors off of it, and we were going, no, that can't. We can't do yellow and orange there on a major intersection. But we don't have a whole lot that says, you bring us what you think, but then it goes, then we have to look at it and go, that it needs to complement everything around it. We can't have anything that's glaring and changing, and so, and that's just one area that it has been hard for me in the 3.5 years I've been here is color. So maybe we can get a little more specific as we rewrite on what we can do, with color.
you mean in terms of which ones a person selects
yeah,
out of that
because
palette?
basically, when we just hand it to them, it seems like we say, well, just find something off of here.
What can be field colors and what can be trim colors
Yeah,
and
Right.
accent colors.
And we
because
can't just.
That's a good point.
You know, we can't just say, here, you pick any 2 or 3 colors you want off of here, because they may just be hideous as heck.
That's how we ended
Oh,
up with the
no.
purple building. But-
That's right.
Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
I'm so glad you did. We've got some good ideas on things to
Well,
change.
that's just the one area that really, I feel like that we don't have the teeth in it that we need to make suggestions, you know, as far as
But-
colors.
And that's where we do, and as a group, it's, you know, I implore upon all of you to speak up and say, well, have we considered that? Now, we have no reason or right to get in and design something for someone. No, I don't think we want to go there at all. That's what there are designers and there are architects out there to do that. But we can say what we are expert at, and that's the Red Book. You know, and we need to know that.
And then if we could just say, you know, that your base color of your building needs to, you know, if you're bumping up against another building, you need to have a nice flow between the 2 buildings. You can't just say, okay, here's one building, and then we're going to put this one right up against it. They're going to be just 2 totally opposing colors. No, and I don't know how to do that, but
And I think we addressed that fairly well with the donut shop.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
building I'm thinking of. And they did real well.
They
They
did.
took it real well, and it looks nice.
It's
But
looking
according
really
to our
good.
actual guidelines, we had no right to tell them, no, you can't
See,
use those
that's what I
colors.
say. That's
Right.
what we
Yeah.
don't have a right.
If you read the Red Book, we asked for you to pick the from the historic preservation
And they
colors.
did.
And they did, but they weren't colors that we liked. And so we were technically in the wrong, but
Yes.
thank God we
It
did.
turned out fine.
You know, it turned out fine.
That's
But
what
so
I was
if we
thinking
just
all
had
the
some
time we were
teeth to
doing
say,
that.
look, if you're gonna paint the base of your building, it has to come from one of these colors. You're not gonna pick the purple and paint an entire building purple and decide to use yellow as the trim color because there's a purple and a yellow to choose from. That's hideous.
And accents of green and orange.
You know, I mean, I think that the base color should be a
And that
brick
could
tone
happen.
or an earth tone of some kind that,
Yeah,
of what they,
terracotta color or
terracotta
something.
colors that the buildings traditionally were made from.
Well, that's why we go through this.
And in the same scope, not too much different than that, but then what building materials we will allow for new or infill construction that, or
Even if it ends up in an alley.
even if it ends up in an alley.
And that's
It's
been a
infill.
problem.
Infill is infill, whether it's street front or behind another one. So we will need to come up with colors and building materials that are cut and dry, that it's not something that we have to, it's a group where it's not a gray area, or it's not how we feel.
Right, because it ends up being like just our personal opinions.
Yes.
I felt that way.
That's
with
what
the
it
donut
sounds
shop,
I mean,
you know.
Yeah.
what we're
Sounds like
known
that.
for is for our brick buildings,
Yes.
our red brick buildings. Me personally, I think any building that comes in here in the district should be made of brick, should have an exterior brick facade.
We don't care
Point.
what's underneath. It can be a steel
It
building.
could be a steel
You can-
building, but give me a brick
But it
facade
has
to
to have
look
a
at.
brick facade and and some sort of,
Or limestone, you know, like they did the limestone corner, I mean, it's a, I don't know what this stuff is actually called, because it's not limestone, but it gives the appearance that it's limestone, like at IBC.
the
or
coining,
then-
yeah, the coins and everything, the way they do that.
Evis.
And then, and roof line, and type of roof line, type of roof material, and not just a steel metal roof. It would be some sort of,
Which leads us to awnings and what those are constructed of.
well, that's, now we're getting away from you and more what I wrote down, but
Right.
that's.
Well, and that's why I wanted to step through kind of a preface on this is how we got from 1974 to here, so that we have an understanding that these aren't just things that we pick out of the air, but rather something that is based on National Trust and the National Park Service. going
And their
through
years
it.
of expertise.
And their years of, we do not need to bring in with a wheel. So.
No.
Well, given that, I have to tell you that Ed has come up with a great list for us to talk about how to look at our Red Book and areas that he has
Personal
ideas.
of what I have see that needs to be addressed,
far,
and so
Right.
that everybody else can add to it, or we can discuss that. This is just my personal wish list,
I
so to
think we have to
speak.
get to this. so
Right,
it
and
can
it's
go on.
always easier if somebody gets into the water first and has a few ideas, and we can add our own. I think this will just get the conversation and the ideas rolling down there,
Now,
so.
there's neon, which is a biggie.
It is.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
You know, so, and I don't know, if it was, it didn't do both sides, did it? Now, these are just questions, these are
Yeah.
things that I.
Yeah, those are just your questions. I didn't, I just
And
hit.
what are the- yeah, we just did
We'll
that,
bring
so.
those up as we go along.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn this over to the Ed Show now.
Well-
And if we can talk about, there's basically the major areas of both design and signs. And I think as we go through, well, and you've got it right here, signs and codes on that. The two things we need to do for the next however meetings it takes to go through this is to define our scope of work. How much are we going to go through? Are we going to go item by item? How do we want to break it down? And so on. And that's why I'd like to hear from you guys.
If I could make a suggestion, we take a topic, whether it be signs, building codes, whatever anybody else has, a part of this book. And we go through and we hash out everything we're going to do for that. Let's just say pick signs. So we're going to go through and we're going to redo all the signs and figure out what we're going to allow, not allow, get it clarified. And we as a commission vote and ratify whatever we come up with, and that go to the city council and be voted on, and it's done. And it's going to be it will be added to the book at that point, and then we go on to the next. Now, it's not saying that we're going to be working on all of these maybe at the same time in some ways, but at least instead of trying to do it the whole Megillah and send it to the city council as just one packet, we do it in several packets as we get done with it, so we can get things done and initiated, and that way it's going to be in effect much sooner for certain things, and we can take as far as what we feel is what is the most pressing item do we need to do first, and that way we can.
Let me clarify something in my mind. Okay, we've got the ordinance, and we have two sets of guidelines. Are we going to rework the ordinance? Is that ours to rework? Or are we just talking about the two sections of guidelines?
We can redo the ordinance.
We can make recommendations to the entire. I would suggest we start with the guidelines first, because that's the meat of what we look at. I mean, everything we do is based on, type of fabric, type of, whatever
Absolutely, yeah.
of the building.
I just want to make sure where we're starting, where we're going.
Yeah, I mean,
first.
that's the part that everybody touches. By that, I mean the applicants that come before us. The ordinance itself talks about how we do our business. What's the area of the capital town site district? That's the guideline that we do go by. But design and signs, I think, are, again, 98% of what applicants come to us for, and that's our first thing.
The reason I was wondering is if there was any need to redo the ordinance, or if
think
just
not.
we need to look through it and see if there's any small tweaks here
Yeah.
and there.
Well, I think that's really what, the ordinance is pretty well cut and dry, but you're
Yep.
right, tweaks would be the best way to put it, to either add a word or take a word out, or make more clear of what is
Yep.
and what isn't expected.
That's kind of
Right.
what I was wondering. Okay, we
Yeah.
can do the guidelines
Because
and
I
then
think
move into that.
there were
will-
so many people who worked on the ordinance and spent
Sure.
a lot of time and detail
Absolutely.
and comparison with other historic ordinances. I think by and large, we feel comfortable with the ordinance, but taking a look at how it's actually implemented is where we need to focus.
There you go.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So this is what I came up with over the weekend, and in reading the book and going through it and just making notes and seeing and knowing what we're dealing with all the applicants and with the public at large when they come in and they're mad at us because we can't do certain things or are not allowed to do certain things, or even though, we only deal with pretty much the exterior of the building, we still deal with the first 3 foot inside the storefront window. And that's a kind of a gray area. And so how do we do that? And again, neon and open signs, and that didn't come before the commission. That was kind of a city thing that all these little neon, open flashing neon signs are now everywhere. Plus, we haven't had a problem with it yet, but I know that we've gone through this on Planning Commission, is the electronic signboards that are popping up everywhere. And even though they haven't made it into town yet, they will, and we don't have a device really.
To keep that from happening.
Okay, let me interject
We have
there.
some things.
Our signs, it says in there that sign guideline is for areas that are not located within the Townsite Historic District.
Yes.
So that the sign guidelines as identified in this book still rule the Townsite Historic District. The city guideline has no effect
In here.
in here, no. And in terms of the neon sign, that was an ordinance that went before city council.
Mhm.
Okay. Just
Which
saying.
is no neon, except in specific post-1920 buildings, apparently.
Well, I have it here. This was back in 2004 that it went. It said neon signs open, approved neon signs to be installed on the inside only. I think it was the one that just says open was all that it could say. I'm trying to read it really quickly. But yeah, I can get you all a copy of that if you want
That'd
to
be
take a
good.
look at it. Okay.
Or, is it all online, or is it,
Yeah.
we can get all that online? But anyway, this was what I came up with, and any other ideas, thoughts, additions that we need to add to this, and then we can start talking about it.
I've had a couple of people ask me how Boomerang got away with all the signage in their windows.
It was pulled down substantially from what it was. The signs
Yeah.
were
Yeah, but
much
that was
smaller.
before I came on, so.
Yeah,
It was.
The
and the
reason,
colors were changed as well.
yeah, they are not as bright, they're more subdued, they're not their normal logo that they would have used, their actual corporate
And
colors.
they made lots of concessions to.
They really did.
To do what they did. even.
And we conceded to some things, but there was some cartoonish figures that they wanted on big signboards and things, and we said, no, you can put that on a door. And then, of course, the
They
window
wanted
treatments,
red, too.
they don't necessarily, well, I think they do, I don't know if it does, but it more or less, as we've said, most everybody here can put their hours on, they can show what their wares are. It's not necessarily the name of the business, and that's what those window panels, it's kind of like.
Yeah, just along the bottom.
Along the bottom, it
But
says shapes.
they have filled all the windows with multiple things. They change out with seasons, they do this.
Well, now they're
they do
painting
that.
on,
supposed to-
they're not supposed to be painting on, I've noticed that too. They had a lot, just lately, they had a lot of paint on
Yeah.
the sign.
Because they started out, it was just along the bottom, which,
Yeah.
not that big.
That's all
but-
they're
That's what
allowed
we
to
were
do.
allowed. That's what we were
And
allowed.
we took, I'm trying to be, we took certain latitudes with the Mumford thing.
Sure.
And in some cases, they've expanded on that, and we need to.
They continue doing.
Right,
Yeah.
and that needs to be tightened down, so it's like, okay,
Okay.
you've had your time.
Okay,
Now
here you go.
let's go back to as it was
Yep.
pre-September.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I
And
noticed.
they're, you know,
No, I was just curious about the upper portions. That- yeah.
I mean, initially, no, that was fine,
Yeah,
but,
Well, let me
gotcha.
ask you about the neon thing, which comes up quite often.
Okay.
I am still
Let me
confused
go
about
back to
that.
that, okay.
Someone with good knowledge of the ordinances
Okay.
actually told me that the donut shop, because of the era building that it is, could have used neon. Now,
Yes.
Yes.
so
you
that
could
is
have.
true?
Yes,
Okay,
that's correct.
okay.
I'm still confused about neon open signs in the district. Yes or no? Is
Yes,
it-
We're allowed the
neon
one that can
signs with a
flash.
single word "open" shall be considered.
Okay.
Block style lettering, no script. The sign size
And so we
shall
have-
be 12 by 25, one sign per address. No running or flashing
Right.
lights or on the signs are allowed. Neon colors limited to no more than 2. Approved neon signs not transferable from one address to another.
In what year was that written?
2004, January 20th.
Pre-LED.
Yes.
So these signs that we see, they're not neon.
No.
They're
No.
not.
They're LEDs,
And they're
and they
strip.
flash, and they
And they
strip,
flash,
and they do all those
They
things.
have
Okay,
little dots.
And
they-
they're not
they
square.
shouldn't.
Yeah, they're not square.
And they're not,
Yeah.
block letter, it's all,
But you
And
know
there
what?
should not be any
But you know
neon.
what, honestly, who the hell are we to tell them they can't have an open sign that looks like that? It's hanging inside their window, it's removable, it's not a permanent fixture. Let them have it.
It's up to you, I mean, how.
Yeah, that's what I'm
how-
just saying
yeah.
out loud. Let them have it. What is it hurting? It's not permanent. It's not affecting the structural integrity of the historic building. It's inside the window. If we want to take it down because they want to shoot a movie or do something like that, it's very easily taken off a hook and tucked away and can be placed back when the movie's done. I mean, that's the way because I really would hate to see the movie industry stop coming to town because they can't use our historic district. So when I look at things, is it removable? I mean, we've got blacktop on our streets, but we know just a couple weeks ago they filled First Street with dirt and it looked like a dirt road, and that's awesome. But they can cover it up, they can read, and we can do those things. Now, if they put a permanent neon sign on the structure itself, well, that's not easy to take down. You can't just remove that.
Right.
And so I would say no to that. But something inside the window, who am I to tell you can't hang a flashing LED sign in your window to run your business? That's not my business.
Then if that's the case, we need to change the ordinance, because the ordinance does not allow that.
And I agree with you.
well, and that's
agree
what,
with
and
you.
that, then if, like the second thing,
I
neon
don't
and then
like
the
the
3-foot
flashing neon
window.
signs downtown.
Well, but
I'm
that's not your
That's what I'm
business.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
No,
I'm a
you don't
taxpayer.
own it.
I own my part of this town.
No,
And
you
I
don't
want
own
it
that
to
building.
look right. I'm not saying I own that building. I own
Then you
my.
don't have a right to tell them what they can. No, you don't.
Time out, just a moment. Yeah,
According to
according
the-
to
No, no.
this,
I do
yes,
That's
have
what
the
I'm
right.
saying. I'm saying as a government entity, we're overstepping our bounds.
Okay. Going back to items we discussed before, the signage is something that the description of it comes down from the Department of Interior.
Sure.
Standards for historic communities. That is what the book is based on. The book is not based on,
My personal whims.
your personal
Right.
whims, the Department of Planning, City Hall, but rather the standards that are ID'd from here we go, Illustrated Guidelines for Rehabilitation and such.
And if I could finish my statement, because the guidelines say that that type of open neon sign is allowed, I'm fine with that. But I don't like having 42 different looks in our community.
Well,
I prefer having a pretty standard-looking open sign.
Here's what, the thing is that you're right, and
And
there's-
that's my whim, that's my
there
preference,
are-
just like you
sure,
have yours.
What you're saying is true too. I see there's positives in both things. I agree with what you're saying is that we are creating an atmosphere here in Guthrie of a late 19th, earliest 20th century town. Even though it's in the 21st century and these are 21st century businesses and they're all making 21st century money. The business owner, and I agree, something that can be taken down because that's something that this is a great movie backdrop. I mean, this is the best backlot there is for this, for period movies around. So things that neon and open signs, it would be, and that's education of the business and the building owners to be sensitive and appreciative of the historic nature and to try to comply with something that is historic, or at least something that's more, to give that flavor, to give that aura of being in that time era. That's what brings people to town. If everything is modern and new, something 21st century look, it tends to chip away at that atmosphere that we're trying to put out. The architecture is great, and that's what we're trying to protect, but we're also not only just protecting architecture, we're also looking at what brings people to Guthrie. And yes, people want everybody to go to their business, and that's the reason they have these flashing neon open signs, because they want to attract your attention, but I think that it can be, we're going to have to find a middle road or a balance there between that.
But
Yeah.
we're not, and I agree with you to a certain extent. I think what we're here to do is, personally, is to preserve the buildings. We're not in economic development. So to say to bring business or bring people to Guthrie, I mean, we're here to bring people to Guthrie to the extent of preserving the history of the buildings. But beyond that, I mean, what's inside those four walls and what they do past that glass is, in my opinion, not our business. And if we allow, I mean, and I understand the guidelines allow for it, the building was built in a different era. Across the street here, we have a guy that's got neons in every window. It's great for him. I have no qualms with that. But am I in a building across the street, I have to put my sign 3 feet back? It's a neon sign. It's not a permanent structure. How asinine is that for me to tell someone they have to put it 3 feet back when
And
they can
see, I
still be
agree.
seen through the window?
And I still agree with that. I say we need to we need to address this, the 3-foot rule. And the type of, again, if it's, well, it was given to me as an example, if a really nice restaurant, say, or even a family restaurant, Louis comes to town, their logo is a neon script, Louis. On the outside of the building, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But a neon sign within the storefront window, right next to the window, that is removable if need be, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we're getting off on these flashing open signs. I personally don't like them, but that's my personal feeling. I mean, that it's okay, that's what they are, and it is what it is. I personally wouldn't use one, but that's not, again, that's just...
But once again,
but
if
then-
we're gonna say that it's okay, we need to put it in the ordinance that way. So somebody can't come back to us and say, hey, how come they get to have it and I couldn't?
Well,
because
agreed,
what we
and that's,
do
and
lack
that's
is
what, and that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
And that
Well,
is
things
it.
have changed, and it's time to bring it all together.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're redoing this, because things have changed. And we are deemed inconsistent.
We are, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not good, because how do you can't have any credibility. You can't tell them like, well, this is what it is and blah, blah, blah. It's because, well, who cares, because there's no, it's not consistent. So we have very little credibility in that issue. So then-
Well, what I think we've got a lot of different areas, and I want to continue to work through this, but maybe what we do is take a look at a topic and a schedule that, okay,
Exactly.
on the second month, we're going to go through, signs and masonry or so on. And then people select examples of things they all want to see, maybe from different historic towns. And we do another workshop and say, okay, this is what, Town A looks like. This is an example of their ordinance. Is this something we want to replicate? We do not have to reinvent the wheel here. Find examples of what you like, bring it to the table and say, this is the theme, this works. And then we have a discussion. Majority rules, period. Done.
I really like starting off with, well, in the design guidelines, it's really well stated. I mean, on DG10, on the last paragraph, it's in a large part the visual unity of the capital, historic district is derived from the use of a very limited palette of materials. And then it goes on to the next pages to describe the parts of the building and the palette of materials that are used. It really is well put in this building, or I mean in this book. So things like that, if we go from that and how we work through that, I mean, it goes from there to signage, so wood, and all the different, the roof, it pretty much hits all the topics. And it's what we're trying to do here, I think, so. But, yes, I agree, we need to take a section and address that and work through it, be done with it, and send that on to city council and then go on to the next. I feel that way we can move through and get things.
Well, if you've noticed here a couple of times, we've had an amendment to this, or, I mean, this is basically a full ordinance
Yes.
that was accepted. Like neon, that's an amendment. If there's something that is critical that you see, as a group, hey, we need to change this, we need to change it now because too many people have been complaining and they've got a legitimate reason to complain. Let's change it. one of the things that I'd like us all to consider is that through the Certified Local Governments group, there is some money that is available to hire a consultant. They had an outside person come together and put this all together in a uniform package. I would like to submit that at some point, then we do take all of our changes and have a new one of these. You know, these are great pictures. Let's, you know, there's been changes made to some of them. Let's use those as examples. I'll be honest, I'm getting to the point where I think I have one box left of these binders. You know, people are changing owners and such. I'd like to have a complete packet, book, whatever.
Update the entire.
Update all design guidelines, update all sign guidelines. You know, if there's a few changes to the ordinance, great. Put that in and say, new and revised 2014. Now, I'm going to have to do this with the next budget because that's a 60-40 match. So if we have to spend X, 40% of it's going to have to be matched by the city. But I think it would be a better final product to say, here we go. But identify the items that are critical, and, you know, like this, like I do, okay,
Yes.
fine, I've got a one-page ordinance that amended that on there.
Yes.
And if we do that, because you never know, when you do pull in someone from the outside who has written however many design guideline sets for historic district, they may come forward and say, hey, you know, your thing that was written 15 years ago, you didn't address such and such, but I did over here in this town. You may want to include that. That's why you hire a consultant.
I
You know,
think that's a
they
great idea.
bring new ideas.
Once we go through and we
Yeah.
address the things that we see glaring us in the face.
Yeah.
And get it where we approve and kind of like the way it is, and where everybody else is kind of settled with it, where we've clarified, and then have a consultant look at it and say, yeah, there's going to be things that we didn't see or didn't think of just
Right.
because we're in
Yeah.
our own little world here.
Right, right. Yeah, we could do that and have some meetings with that person and go over and say, okay, this is what we're thinking here.
And that'd be time to get it in the budget.
You bet. And we'll start doing budget work here probably come June or May, which is like tomorrow almost.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes.
Okay, question I'd like to ask.
Yes.
The 3-foot window rule, was that established at some point because they felt like from the door and 3 feet back was still part of the facade? Were we trying to control what was being put in the windows inside? What were we trying to do with that rule?
I think it goes back to the fact that we don't do the interior.
Right.
You know, we only handle the exterior. I am at a loss to tell you where. I think it was something where, you know.
That reason, that they were
Yeah,
still trying to
and I'm
control
James,
a
I'm kinda
portion
looking
of.
at you for
Yeah.
help there on that.
Well, I
but-
think, yeah, I mean, I just think it's
No, and I understand what you're
asinine.
saying,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
It's the same, you still see the same, Boneyard is the perfect example. They have a neon sign in the window, but it's not in the window because it's 3 feet back. You can still, it's blue, you can see it as plain as day, whether it was up against the glass or 3 feet back. It doesn't matter, it's still very visible. So to tell Boneyard, you need to change your floor, or you gotta waste 3 feet of space in front of your window because you want your sign seen, is asinine. Just don't put it in the window. They had it sitting on a table.
Well, I feel if it is tasteful neon, and these buildings lived through the neon era.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were here before, they lived through it, and there's not that much neon now, but I don't foresee neon on outsides of these buildings. Again, we go back to the flavor and the atmosphere that we're trying to portray, but you're right too, we have the businesses that we need to deal with, and if they have neon, that's not attached to the building, but still.
It just seems like that's a ridiculous rule to have,
Yes.
if that's what the thinking was, is, you know, if we go back in 3 feet, we're still controlling part of the inside, and we can make it look like we want it to. And it just looks dumb.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And then for people who don't know, you're looking, why is that sign so far back from the window?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you really look at it, it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes more community, the harmony of the community. It's better public relations between the city and the sign Nazis and the rest of the public. I mean, nobody's going to do everything that we like or to our taste. Everybody's got their own. It's like opinions and everything else that you think about opinions.
So why have something that we don't want to enforce or even utilize, like the 3-foot window rule, you know?
And makes Mr. Fish here the bad guy when he has to
Run
go
around
and
with his
say,
yardstick.
with your yardstick and putting things in and,
Turned his hair white.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's going back black again now, so I've already gone all the way.
There you go.
I don't know, I think that's just something that.
That's black light.
I think that's an easy one to say we should just scrap, but that's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out here. What about the person or the business who says, I want people to know that on Tuesdays, I have a 40% off sale, and then on the third Wednesday, I have a 15% off sale. You know, you kind of throw your hands up in the air.
Well, I think
I'm just putting that
I think
out
it
there.
goes back to, I like the idea that we have a size constraint on the amount of signage that can go in a window. I mean, as long as you aren't occupying more than, I don't know what our percent even is.
30%.
30%, then put your 40% sign up, as long as it's not occupying more than 30% of your window. But
Well, I look at that type of thing, as what you're saying, I look at that type of weekly ad as a sandwich board type of ad. Not necessarily something that you would put in a sign going in the window, but that's things we're going to hash out of, and again, it's types of signs that we allow, because we don't allow newspapers to be plastered in the windows.
And we had that
And we had that
situation
situation.
where a person or a business put in probably 10 copies of the same newspaper ad scotch taped to the inside of their windows every week. That was years ago.
was Dollar General, I'm guessing.
You bet.
And that was, the ordinance was said at that point, so no, specific signage. So we still have to be careful of, we don't want to open up Pandora's box, but and that's part of becoming more, we just have to clarify what can and what can't be in the windows. Again, advertising your wares, we allow that. Hours of operation, we allow that. The 3-foot rule, I think, is something that needs to go away too. I don't feel that that's anything that doesn't help us out. It's not that good for anybody, because you're right. You can just set the sign back 3 feet,
And it looks ridiculous.
and it takes up space, and it
Well, we've all
causes.
talked about it. Can we make a motion to just disband that rule tonight?
No,
No?
because you didn't have it on the agenda. Has to be posted
Well,
48
put that on
hours.
next week's agenda, or next month.
Well, that's why we're here doing this. I mean, all this different thing, we need to, that's why we're doing.
Somebody needs to write it up, which I'll be more than happy to do. Can you give me some examples of, you see where I'm going?
So do you want to start by working on the signs next month? Because that's going to be,
I think that's going to be a big one, and that, right now, that seems to be
Major things
the,
that we deal with.
it seems like that is what we deal with the most. We don't have to, we do deal with other things, but not as
much.
that's what our agendas usually are, is approving a sign somewhere.
Yep.
And some of these others then, at whatever point in the future that we do it, could be a double or a triple. Like we could do maybe masonry and electric at the same
Sure.
time.
Yeah.
That kind of
You
thing,
bet.
roofs and whatever. But I think signage is going to take a good meeting, at
Well, it's
least,
like,
to
and
work
that
through.
was one of my
I
things
think
on
of a couple.
addressing
Yeah.
signage, sign guidelines, page 10, section 5, B, C, and D. Well, each commercial building is limited to one primary business sign per elevation. In addition to, each business may also place secondary signs directly lettered on a windows, door, or storefront glass. Well, personally, I feel that if they have a perpendicular a hanging sign on the building, I feel that they should be able to have one of those also. They have their main sign across on the front board, either whether it go in what used to be the entresol or in the lintel steel beam that's there, and then a hanging sign out, because we're telling everybody, it's one or the other. And it's like, wait a minute,
Well,
you know.
You went through
Yeah,
that.
you told me no, and
Yeah,
SWAC-
you
Because that's
wanted
where we are
it.
right
You
now.
wanted
but
it.
Yeah.
SWAC has it. I mean, they have big old SWAC on the front, and then they got one that hangs
One
up
hangs
that
out.
says SWAC.
Well, and, we've talked about Granny had one, they had restaurant and,
And that's why
different
we need
things.
to
Yeah.
clarify this, and I think that, I feel that, you're driving down the street, you need to see it, and then you see it in front of you. I don't feel that that's going to be a bad thing to put in a hanging sign or a perpendicular sign as it's just limit it to one primary sign. I mean, now whether we word this as a hanging sign and a primary sign, or do we say two primary signs? I mean,
One
as
of
it
which
stands
can be
now-
this way or
Yeah.
one this way,
that way, right now, we allow two primary signs on corner buildings.
Okay, before we start
Yeah.
rewriting it all now, because those are things that we're gonna have to go through and discuss. I'd like people to bring examples. Let's just figure
Yeah.
out what our scope and how we're going to go about
that was-
doing it.
But that
yeah,
was why I
so-
was bringing that up. I mean, we're not going in, it's just, right, we don't want to get into that tonight, but I agree with you, we need to have, that's part of these sign guidelines that we need to address, along with the 3-foot
Right.
rule and strengthen
So
and
it is
clarify
possible
illumination.
that the next 2 months need to be with signage.
At least
At
2 months.
least
Yeah.
2
Maybe
months.
probably be more.
So, well, why don't we say the next 2, and then when we get into that second month, we'll know for sure if we need to take a third month,
You bet.
instead of saying, we're gonna do 3 months. We can't do anything else, yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no.
But
You
in
know,
order to be able to post it as you need to.
Right.
To keep us
I
legal.
just need, yeah,
Yep.
thank you. Yeah, what I would suggest is we take one topic, and right now we're looking at signs,
Yeah.
and say,
Yeah.
sign discussion number 1.
Yep.
Do we need another meeting? Okay, next meeting we'll have
Sign.
sign,
Yes.
and number
Second
2.
phase,
But
yeah.
that will also give us, we're going to have to take homework upon each one of us and say, let me become familiar with that. Do we want to start identifying fonts? Do we want font size? Do we want serif, sans serif? Let's bring examples. Is
Yeah.
that critical anymore? This
Yeah.
thing even says a sign should have a border on it. Do we want,
Yeah.
Because, well, again, and we have taken liberties, even though these are the sign guidelines, we have allowed signs recently that do not have borders, and they are in script, and different things like that, at different fonts. Do we limit it to, here's the font you can make your sign out of, period? And people are gonna go, they're gonna scream, because they're gonna say, that's not what they
They'll
want.
bring back the
Let me ask
sign
you this, is there a
Nazi.
list somewhere of the cities that are on this registry or whatever to fit the guidelines? Because in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking Boulder, Colorado, that place is a hit place, it's got the historic buildings downtown, but they don't, there's a lot of this that would be considered BS that we're talking about, as far as
But
the
I don't
signage,
know
'cause
that
it's-
they are.
So but that's why I'm
Yeah,
curious,
that's what I'm saying. I
who
don't
are
know.
they?
I don't think so.
I don't think so
Yeah, I
either.
believe there's a list, again, I have not gone through everything on the National Park Service, historic buildings, but you've got to go through that. It's got to be there if it's anywhere.
But see, like what we were just talking about with the different signage, if we have 2 on a building,
that.
this would allow James to come back to us under the reworked guidelines.
Yes.
With your original proposal.
I ain't paying no more money.
No, I'm not saying that I'm not saying anything about that. He keeps accusing me of stopping all this, and it wasn't me.
But again, we have to be cautious and take in mind of, again, the flavor and
Yeah.
the atmosphere of what we're trying to achieve here. Yes, new modern fonts, there's new modern signage, they are modern businesses, and they are in obsolete buildings for what they're originally intended. So we have to be
I've got another one, too.
cautious of that, mindful of that.
Mindful.
The font that you would put on, say, the donut shop will differ greatly from what you would put on one of our tall.
And in my opinion, font really is not a big concern.
And font, we've allowed for variances if it was a chain or not a chain or.
Yeah, if it's
And so
if
kinda
it's a
like if
national.
we
it-
allow it for some, then it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there are some pretty bold fonts that are definitely modern, that,
that we
wouldn't want to see.
that we have to be cautious of,
Yeah.
and different sign types that we have to be cautious of, and how they're lit and that kind of thing. And I think that we just need to make that that has to be more of a cut and dried thing.
Well, it may be in here already, but, you know, you have to take into consideration the architecture of the building to the fonts that you would limit it to. Because like the donut shop, if you put a script on it, it's gonna look dumb. But there, they could get away with a more modern looking font, because that's a nice, what, 30s building maybe? So,
Yeah, it's a little younger than that. But
30s,
yeah,
50s, somewhere in
Yeah.
that frame. But
but those are the kinds of things. It truly is like writing an ordinance for anything else, in terms of you have to think of all possibilities. You know, what could possibly happen? We did that for the signage for the rest of the town. You know, what are the possibilities? You know, do you have it different if you're 50 feet away from I-35 versus on Division? Every
It took-
thing.
It took,
You remember?
well, it darn near took a full year just to do the signs for the rest of the town. I think it did take right at about a year before we were able to get it to where, and then we had to go back, because that's when these electronic, huge electronic signboards started coming in, and how
Well,
bright
see,
can they be, and how
like
fast can they
Edmund just
change?
passed, where those are legal now.
Well, they had to. There's no-
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah.
That's,
Again,
that's the, you
things
can't
change.
stop progress, and
Yeah.
that is progress.
And that's what I'm saying, they just did that in the last, what, it was less than a month ago that they finally
We have,
capitulated.
I know our
So-
ordinance says it can't be, it has to be, and they call it nits, how bright it
many
is,
nits.
how many nits it can be. It can't be over so many nits during the day as opposed to night, how fast it changes, what it can change to, is can it be motion picture or not, can it just, it gets very detailed, and we had, I don't know how many sign guys come in
I think 3 different sign
to
guys.
explain the different things. It's pretty in-depth. So, and if we have to be that in-depth with what our signage here in the historic district is, well, then so be it. It'll take a year to go through and get it fixed. But that's what it'll be, and when it is, hopefully everybody will understand, and we're keeping the historic town site the best we can.
Well, maybe what we just do is say, we're going to start with signs. We will start with SG1 and start.
move forward.
I think there was a movie by that. Stargate
Stargate.
1. Yes, we're gonna start Stargate. And just work forward from the beginning. And basically, truly do give homework then each month. It says, okay, guys, go
we
get
got-
examples
Go out and find
of your
things.
burning need on what you
Or
want to see.
hate, or whatever.
Yeah, you know, it's like,
And hopefully there will be public input. Because, you know, and that's the problem, with everybody screams and yells that, I don't like this, but it's an open topic thing. They need to be in here and giving their
yeah.
2 cents.
And every meeting is open. I mean, that's why we have to have
Have it posted.
the agenda posted
Yeah.
ahead of time, so that if people want to come and talk, they can get up and say, hey, Historic Preservation Commission, don't forget to include this.
Or why is this a
Yeah, or why is this silly
3-foot rule?
3 foot
Yeah, why is this what it
there?
is, you know?
That's a good
I
one to
feel that
just
that's
use.
an obsolete rule, or maybe conceived. I can understand that there had to be some, maybe there was a issue or a need at the time that was written, that was a problem for what was being
Or
put in the
thing.
windows,
Yeah,
or,
I have no idea.
yeah.
That's
But now, I don't know if that's something that, you know, that maybe doesn't seem to be an issue at the moment, and maybe we'll find out what
Well,
that issue
and
is
if-
if we let. I'm sure we will.
Because we are stating that our business is the facade, the outside of your building. Then why do we move 3 feet in? That's inside. That's not the outside.
Well, I understand it's the visual aspect of.
And that's the only thing I can think of is why it was
Yeah.
put there, but
Well, then, at the
Curb appeal.
next meeting, shall we set aside, the next meeting being next month, so that's understood. I'm looking at sign guidelines. The first one gets into basically background. I don't see us
Yeah.
touching that until later, but
Purpose.
number 3, sign types, which is basically begins on SG7.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, basically, we're talking about SG7 and SG8. We have recommended sign types and sign types that are not compatible.
Yes.
Why don't we just, as you're flipping, through in the evening, bring pictures of signs that you think are great. We can decide from there, what it is.
That makes
Let's
it-
lay them all out. Maybe we end up with 100 different signs that say, okay, I like that. Let's include something like that. That is an example of what we don't want, and go back and forth. And then make a list, a pile, an example of what's good, what's bad. Merge that with what's here, take out the things that make no sense, and we will work on page 7 and 8 the next time around.
That sounds good.
And
Does that need to be voted on or anything?
no,
No.
And the internally illuminated signs, what's the story with why those are never?
because they didn't have internally illuminated signs in 1889.
They were externally illuminated.
Yes, whether that was from a candle or whether there was a bulb that came through and shined on it, because there were buildings that had electricity back then, but not plastic panels that glowed.
Although we do have one.
Do you have what? Oh, plastic candles. Who's
That glows?
Yeah,
who is it?
I'll wait. But
Okay.
it's been for,
Nice sign.
as long as I've been here.
Oh, we both have
Just-
Now you're gonna make me drive through the streets.
Well-
Will you find it for me? You tell me where it is next meeting. You show me.
I think I know what you're talking. Okay, we do need to vote on the, let us come out of a workshop and go back to, now that we have a
I think it's a good
full
start.
quorum.
Yeah.
I really feel good. When I came in here tonight, I thought, this is going to be untouchable. It's not going to be a doable deal. I think we can do that.
Oh, no.
I think we can do
it's
this.
very
Yeah,
doable.
I appreciate all the education this evening, because like I said, I'm so new
Oh,
at this
thank you.
that
Thank you.
it's just good to try to figure it out.
Yeah, like I said,
I think it's good for all of us,
I think.
whether you've been on for a
this-
long time or,
Yeah.
Yep.
This may be something that we replay for those that couldn't be here tonight, to understand how we got here.
How we got here.
Since 1974, on these things and go through.
Some people weren't born in '74, were they?
No, sure wasn't.
See, I didn't know.
Oy vey.
and some of us
Thanks.
graduated from high school days.
Yeah, that's when, I was
Or
graduating.
before.
Yeah, but, so-
Yeah, or before.
So now we know how old everyone is.
Yeah, now we know.
Yeah, young whippersnapper, you.
When did you graduate?
Okay.
Well, actually, I had 2 senior years, so.
There's a story
it was-
there.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
there
want to hear
is.
this story, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Some other night.
actually, it's actually not as dramatic as it sounds.
So which one do you count?
Jail time?
Both of them. Yeah, that's
74, 75?
75 was when I actually got my diploma. So, but that was a very light year.
dang, I
And I
didn't
won't
know
get
it was
into it here, but I actually was.
You are?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
What is it? What do you call
71.
it? I got that kissing sickness.
Mono.
Mono. Yeah, I got mono, and it knocked me out of school. And
So you didn't have
boy.
enough time and credit and
Oh, I
all
was
that.
thinking all these more exciting.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it wasn't anything. It wasn't anything bad. It's
Okay.
just.
Hey, that is a kissing disease, though. Couldn't
Yes,
be.
it is. Well, it was a lot of fun.
Okay. Okay.
I digress. Let's go. Let's move back to
Approval
item
of
2 of consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes of January 6, 2014. Has everybody had a chance to review them and make sure that they are right, or any?
Oh, I really think I was here. Shows me absent, but it says Billy Wheeler, then I was here when we
You
did
came in,
Wheelers.
you were the last one that made the quorum that came in. Yes.
I was here.
Okay,
Yes,
that
so
needs
we
to
need
be.
to be.
It was Aaron Brown that was absent.
Yes, Aaron and
Kathy was here and Aaron was
I was gonna say, I
absent.
know when we approved Billy and Sherry's sign.
I
was
don't
here.
and Sandy Bothroyd was not here.
Right, it was, James, myself, Kathy, and you.
Yes. And Aaron
Aaron was not.
was absent, yes.
Yeah. Because you weren't sure you were going to be there.
Right. Yes, that you're exactly right.
Otherwise, we would not have had a quorum.
Yes.
So with that correction,
Very well, so with the corrected minutes, is anything else that can be seen? If not, I would move for someone to make a motion to...
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I will second.
And a second. May we have a vote, please, sir?
Chairman Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins.
Yes.
The minutes are approved.
Why, thank you very
As
much, sir.
revised.
Any reports or comments from staff?
No.
No?
I've chatted for an hour and a half. You don't want to hear me anymore.
You want to get home to that chili and
I want the
snow.
chili, I want to watch the snow.
Any other comments from commissioners? None now? Okay, then I would move for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
So moved.
So
Thank you very much.